So I've got a lot of people asking me questions about how awesome or how bad Virginia Beach or Williamsburg or any of the cities in Hampton Roads are. So what I thought I'd do is I'd take all the worst things about each city in Hampton Roads and put them on a ranked list. It could be one thing about one city or the entire area, the entire region. I'm going to rank them from 10 to 1 so you can see the things that I most dislike, that if you come here, please don't be surprised about these things. Please be prepared, because they can surprise some people and they can often cause people to regret moving here. And we're starting right now. Hey, my name is Sam Santalone and I'm a real estate agent in the Hampton Roads area. That includes Virginia Beach and it goes through Williamsburg. And I do videos every week about living and moving to the area. So number 10 is going to be the unwalkability of just about all of Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach, and going through to Williamsburg. So this area is really big. And you look on the map, I'm going to show you how big it is. Goes from the south part of Chesapeake and Virginia Beach down near the border of North Carolina and all the way up towards Williamsburg in the top part of the peninsula, or the central part of the peninsula. Now, it's a large land size. And because it's a large land size, you're going to find a lot of places that have tons and tons of roadways that connect from one part of the area to the other. With that being said, there is there's no big, huge downtown or walkable part of town that people can just flock to all the time. Now, there are some spots. Downtown Norfolk, for example. Virginia Beach has a town center, which has walkability to a certain degree. There are some smaller pockets, like, for example, Hilton on the west side of the peninsula in Newport News. City Center in Newport News. Chesapeake has a new area called Summit Point, which has a walkable area too. And, of course, the beach. But none of these spots are massive. Norfolk has the best downtown, or the largest downtown, but even that, compared to a lot of the other larger cities or metropolis areas in other places in the country that have similar population sizes, it just doesn't compare. And so you'll find it very hard to find widespread parts of the cities that are walkable. And it's very annoying. And so unless you want a specific type of house, you're going to have a hard time finding a place that has walkability and a larger level of options for types of houses. Norfolk has older houses, and because it's a downtown area, the oldest downtown area that's here, and there's a lot of older houses around there, which adds to the idea of, if you want walkability, the best options are most likely going to be Norfolk. But if that happens, you'll most likely have older houses to choose from. It's hard to find a balance of all the things that people want in a walkable area in anywhere in Hampton Roads. Now that brings us to number 9, which is in Chesapeake, how boring Chesapeake can really feel. And I mentioned this a few times in a lot of my other Chesapeake videos, but goodness gracious, it does feel boring. I say it feels boring because it's not always boring, but when you're in Chesapeake, it can feel very rural. And because of that, it feels like you got to just drive an extra 10, 15 minutes to get to somewhere that's more interesting. So in Chesapeake itself, it's going to be very comfortable. The school districts are in demand. It's a very relaxed vibe in Chesapeake, and most of Chesapeake. But it doesn't feel like, if you're in Chesapeake, there's not a lot of a hustle and bustle going on. I mentioned Summit Point that has some walkable shops. Greenbrier has a lot of shopping, and there are some parks that are larger parks that there's some more local festivals and things like that. But it's more of a local, kind of a rural country feel than it is places like Virginia Beach or even Norfolk. Now, the benefit to being in Chesapeake, though, is if you want that kind of vibe, that kind of more of a rural country vibe, you can be in Chesapeake, but still you're 15, 20 minutes away from a lot of the other central parts of town. So it's not like Chesapeake has no access to anything interesting. It's just that when you're in Chesapeake, if you think about the idea of living in Chesapeake and you're not going anywhere else, you're going to feel like you're kind of separate from the rest of Hampton Roads. So that goes to number 8, which is in Virginia Beach. It's how expensive Virginia Beach has gotten. Back in 2020, there were a lot of people that came to Virginia Beach from different parts of the country. The West, people came from California, from Oregon, from Washington State, and also Northern Virginia, another more expensive part of the country. So with that comes people that have incomes that can support a higher cost of living. And so a lot more people that are working remote came here. And so in the last 2-3 years, you started seeing prices go from, a house you could find at $400,000 would become $500,000. This was an area that was well known for a little bit cheaper cost of living compared to what you might find in other parts of the country similar. And it's still cheap to me in relation to other, beach areas, but it's not as cheap as it used to be. The divide, the gap between what's in Virginia Beach and other parts of the country is getting more narrow. And so people that are coming here are finding that if you want a house, for example, that's $275 in Virginia Beach, you're not going to find too many single family houses. There are literally, I checked before I recorded this video, there were literally three bedroom, 2-bath houses in Virginia Beach under $300,000 that were on the market. And there were 2 others that were like short sale or like distressed houses that I really wouldn't even count. So that means that prices have increased. Now the median sales price is getting up into the 4s, and people that are wanting a house in the 5s and 6s can still get a nice house, but you're going to find less options in that lower price range compared to what people were coming here to get back 2 to 3 years ago. So now we go to number 7, which is the surprising amount of tolls in the Hampton Roads area. Now, there are several that just kind of come up on you and surprise you. Starting with some surprise tolls in Chesapeake. And if you go into the central southern part of Chesapeake, one of the tolls that are the most annoying is the Route 17, the Veterans Bridge, which is a newer toll that connects from Greenbrier in this area over down towards the southern part of Chesapeake. Another one's going further north, a couple of them actually. The tunnels, the downtown tunnel and the midtown tunnels are also tolls that connect from Norfolk or Chesapeake over into Portsmouth, as well as the Jordan Bridge, which is expensive. If you realize you made a mistake and drove across it because the GPS doesn't always tell you that you're driving across the toll, you might go across and come back and you'd be paying like $6 to do that. Now, there's also the high-rise bridge in Chesapeake as well that goes across from the central part of Chesapeake and Virginia Beach over into the western part near Western Branch. This one is not a traditional toll. You can go across it and not pay, but this area is getting widened and there will be some express lanes that will be constructed. And so to save some time traffic wise, you could be paying an additional toll for that, as well as some express lanes up into the 64 region as well, going closer towards the Norfolk Navy base on the north side of Norfolk. So 64 also has some express lanes. Got another one, which is the Coleman Bridge, which goes from Yorktown to Gloucester. It's a smaller toll. Make sure you plug in on your GPS. This is very important if you're moving here. Make sure your directions tell you how to avoid the tolls. So if you don't want to deal with any of that kind of stuff, you can see the difference in distance between going through an area that has a toll as opposed to an area that doesn't. So one of the benefits to being on the western side of Hampton Roads is the James River Bridge, which is not a toll. So if you want to commute to Langley, Newport News, this area, like you're going to the Langley Air Force Base, and you're trying to find somewhere separate from Newport News and Hampton, and Williamsburg is just too far, then I would consider going into the Carrollton, Suffolk part of town, because you don't pay a toll to go across the bridge or the tunnel on the side of the area, and so it can be a little bit more of a drive, but you're not going to be paying more for it. And that brings us to number 6, which is the extreme amount of mosquitoes in Hampton Roads, and that's Virginia Beach through Williamsburg. I can't tell you how frustrating it is to not only have humid weather in the summertime and into the fall and spring, but when you're outside, you're hanging out in the backyard, it is so common to be bitten up with mosquitoes. It only takes a few minutes. And so if you're allergic to mosquito bites, this can be a frustrating place to live. Screened-in porches are very, very helpful for this. And so if you're going to be moving here, living here, definitely be prepared for mosquitoes. And it's not just close to the water. You can be in the middle of town, not close to water, and still your yard be filled with mosquitoes, especially as you get into the evening hours. Now that brings us to number 5, which is the jet noise in Virginia Beach. Now this jet noise is a problem to some people, but I would have it ranked higher if not for the fact that it really isn't as far widespread of a problem across the entire area as it might feel like based on it being a big discussion topic in the largest city in Hampton Roads. So Virginia Beach, has the Oceana Naval Air Station, and I'll show you on the map where that is. It's on the southeastern section of Virginia Beach, and it's this whole section right here. So the eastern side, kind of the southern part, and also parts of the northern section, like around the Great Neck area, the center part of Great Neck and below, and also most of the ocean front. And below that, I would suggest checking the ACU's jet noise zone map, and that shows you in color codes where the most concentration of more jet noise that there is in Virginia Beach. So as you get away from those deeper colors, darker colors, you're going to have less of an issue with jets. And eventually you get to the point to where you're not even going to notice. If you could live in Virginia Beach and not even realize you're close to jets at all, you will never hear it if you're far enough away. So a lot of people will pick the north central or south central or western sides of Virginia Beach if they need to live in Virginia Beach, but they don't want to hear anything about the jets. So definitely do some research here. Check that map out. I'll put it in the description below so you can see where the actual issues are. In addition to that, going further south, the Fentress Airfield is also in the south part in Chesapeake. It's also an issue on the southeastern section of Chesapeake, but not as big of a widespread spot either. So kind of this section here, this area, you'll hear it if you're close, but it's not as widespread. Another place to consider, though, if you're trying to avoid jet noise. And so now number 4 is going to be something that is often discussed, which is Norfolk's flooding issues. And so I say Norfolk flooding issues because a lot of the other parts of Hampton Roads don't have this much flooding, or at least the discussion of flooding as much. There are some specific spots in Virginia Beach or Chesapeake or Poquoson. Hampton also has some spots, but Norfolk, to me, is the biggest issue, most widespread. And that can be in a lot of parts of the area, but talking up closer to Ocean View has a lot of spots that can be problematic closer to the water, and also on the western side of Norfolk, close to Lafayette River, Elizabeth River, Larchmont, going into Ghent, going into Colonial Place. There are some spots all through the western side of Norfolk that can be very problematic. It can be a problem where streets can flood with a huge bad downpour after 30 minutes to an hour, especially if you have several days in a row of rain and there's just nowhere for the water to be saturated by because the land has already been filled with water. That happens frequently enough to notice, as well as big storms. If the rain comes a lot in a short period of time, you'll find streets, intersections that can flood, meaning like you can have some issues with cars being parked on the roads. I've heard and seen cars that have just been totally flooded out. So being parked off of the road in certain streets and intersections can be very helpful, especially in Ghent, going up into Larchmont. The two natural disasters or weather events that have happened that to me give the most indication of how bad the flooding can often get in a certain spot is ask neighbors if you're planning to move to a certain area how bad Hurricane Matthew was in the neighborhood, and also how bad Hurricane Isabel was if people were here long enough 20 years ago, back when Hurricane Isabel hit. Those two hurricanes or tropical systems are, to me, the best indicators of how the localized area in the neighborhood fares in really bad storms. Now, this is one that's real more personal to me, but I think it's a big deal to me. It's a bigger deal, which is there are no major league 4 major sports teams. Now, there are some minor league teams here, but there's no like NFL teams, NBA teams, Major League Baseball, NHL. There's none of that. The closest one is going to be either in Charlotte, like 5 hours southwest, or mostly in Washington, D.C. or Baltimore. The Ravens, the Orioles, the Nationals, the Wizards, all the stuff in the Northern Virginia and Maryland and D.C. area, that's where most of the sports, the major league sports, are going to be. The population is so spread out that it's very hard to attract like a place, like a team that can, really rally people to have a certain fan base that can be stationary here, that can kind of grow over time. The military is a big part of the population here. And so because of that, you have a lot of people that are transient, people coming in and coming out. So it's hard to get the culture and people to rally around one team. You'll have the Norfolk Tides, minor league baseball team, AAA. You also have the Norfolk Admirals, which is a minor league hockey team. You got other teams like that. Old Dominion Monarchs, Division I football, but it's just not the same as compared to one of the 4 major sports teams. Which leads me to the next one, number 2, which is that there is a lack of identity here that I think is very palpable. I mentioned the military. It's a very big military region, Virginia Beach through Williamsburg. And there are minor little identities that can be found, or cultures that can be found in different pockets of the region. Williamsburg, for example, with a colonial vibe. In Norfolk has more of an inner city and downtown kind of hip culture, especially in Ghent. And then the oceanfront, and it has a lot of beach, a lot of like fishing, and that's the beach life around there. But it's not widespread across the whole area. You have a lot of suburbs, a lot of shopping, a lot of functional things to do, schools, great schools, great opportunities for businesses and working. But it's just because of all the transient, to me, this is what's affecting the culture. And there's just, unless you go to the very specific spots where people will come for it, like for example, the beach or maybe for Ghent, the culture vibe here is just kind of fragmented. It's not a huge identity here that I think you could really sink your teeth into across the whole area. And number one, I'd say this is, to me, the most annoying, frustrating thing, and a lot of locals will say to this too, is the tunnel traffic. And I'm not saying traffic has gotten better. I think a lot of locals might deny this, but I think it's true, is traffic is getting better in Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach through Williamsburg. But the tunnel traffic is still a huge problem. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Not because there are several tunnels in Hampton Roads, right? So you got the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, which connects Norfolk on the southern part, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, upwards to Hampton, Newport News, and Williamsburg on this side right here. And then you have the Monterey Merrimack Bridge Tunnel, which is right here, connecting Newport News down to Suffolk and Portsmouth on the western Chesapeake side over here. So then there's the downtown and midtown tunnels, which are right here and right here, which are frustrating mostly during rush hour. And it can be in other parts of the day, especially if there's an accident, but it's not as bad as going up towards the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, which is the king of tunnels, the king of annoying tunnels. It's rough. And so the frustrating part here is that you can try and plan around it, but there's no way really to truly plan around the traffic that happens at the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. The reason is because the traffic can be at any time of the day. One of the biggest reasons as to why this is the case is because the tunnels were designed where the tops of the tunnels were too short for some heights of trucks. What happens is VDOT will have to look, they can look far enough ahead to see where large trucks are that might not have seen the signs, and they have to stop traffic, stop these trucks, make them turn around at the tunnel and go back all the way around the other direction because the height of the tunnel is too short for some of these trucks. So why does that matter? It's because these trucks could be driving through at any point of the day. But the good news here is that the tunnels are getting expanded and rebuilt. And so you're going to see a lot more lanes, and the traffic and the tunnels are going to be larger. And so you're going to find that this won't be as big of a problem in the coming years. And so it's going to change. But until then, it's going to be awful. And I will say, real estate wise, because of this change that will happen, I think that the prices of real estate in Hampton and Newport News are going to increase proportionate to Virginia Beach and Norfolk, because once the traffic does get better, I think people are going to start flocking more to Hampton and Newport News to live, because there aren't as many business opportunities in Hampton Newport News side as opposed to Virginia Beach and Norfolk, but the prices of real estate are cheaper there. And so once the traffic issue is not as bad, I think people will be more willing to go across the water to commute back and forth, because it will save a lot. So I think for value wise, saving money wise, and seeing some appreciation, I think getting a house in Hampton and Newport News before the tunnels are finished, I think is going to generate an increase in value because of these tunnels that are going to get fixed. So if you have any more questions about relocating to Hampton Roads, and it could be Virginia Beach going through Williamsburg, let me know. I love helping people relocate to this area. So if you have any questions, drop a comment below. My contact information in the description. You can email me, call me, and text me at any point, and I'll do whatever I can to help you relocate to the area. And I will see you on the next video.